Hello, viewers of the Vietnamese Ghost Stories channel. Today I would like to tell you a story that is not only creepy, but also extremely haunting. A story that is not simply a ghost story, but hidden behind it is the real pain, the cry of injustice that reaches the sky of the small fates caught up in the vortex of crime. The main character of the story is a young girl named Lai, poor, lonely, living with her old mother in a shabby rented house. Just because of the desire to escape poverty, Lai fell into the sweet trap of human traffickers, and then became the victim of a transnational organ trafficking and prostitution ring. She passed away in pain. Her body was not intact. Her soul could not be released, forever wandering the world in hunger and cold, waiting for someone with enough fate to help her find justice, to return to her mother, who still longs for her every day in vain. This is not only a spiritual story to scare the listener, but also a profound warning about the dangers that are still lurking around us, especially for the poor, uneducated, and gullible. If you are brave enough, join me in the story The Ring Under the River, the soul of a girl who had her organs harvested, to listen to what the deceased wants to leave behind for the living. Thing is nearly 30 years old this year, an IT employee of a foreign company. He has a girlfriend named Tram, the same age as him. The two have been in love for nearly 3 years and have discussed marriage. Everyone thought that Thane would have a happy ending with this love. However, suddenly one evening, Tram texted to break up. The reason she gave was that she had to return to her hometown to marry someone else according to her parents' arrangement. She used very decisive words, asking Than not to contact her anymore and hoping that he would respect her decision. In the end, she just apologized to Than and completely cut off contact. Since then, he has been in pain. In the days after the breakup, Than became quiet and spoke little. At the company, he did not talk to anyone, and his relatives did not know how to comfort him. There were many days in a row after work. Than stayed out drinking with friends until late at night before going home. One day after work, Than wandered to the riverbank, where he and Tram had their first date. He sat alone on a stone bench by the riverbank, recalling the happy memories with Tram. Than thought he had met the right person, but in the end, the ending was not as expected. He decided to take off their engagement ring and throw it into the river. At that moment, the water surface where the ring fell suddenly boiled, creating a circular vortex, sucking the ring to sink to the bottom of the river. About a minute later, the water surface returned to normal. Than was a bit surprised, but because he was sad, he didn't care. In his heart, he thought, "My love for Tram is like that ring. It has sunk deep. There is nothing left to hold on to." From then on, Than gradually became stronger, returning to work as usual. He buried himself in his work to forget his sadness. One rainy evening, Thon had to work overtime because he had to complete an urgent project. At that time, the whole company was left with only him. When he stepped out of the office, it was almost 11 p.m. Than turned off all the lights and left. The electricity in the building was also off. While waiting for the elevator, he felt a cold wind blowing past, making him shiver, his hair standing on end. Than had a feeling that someone was standing behind him. He turned around quickly. There was no one, just pitch-black darkness. Than slapped his head, thinking that he was hallucinating because he was too tired. At that moment, the elevator door opened. Than stepped in, pressed the number for the first floor, and pressed the close button. But strangely, the elevator door refused to close. He pressed the button repeatedly, but it didn't work. Frustrated, he was about to step out and take the stairs when the lights in the elevator suddenly went out, startling him. A dark night enveloped him. Thane took out his phone to turn on the flashlight. At that moment, his phone ran out of battery. He had to grope his way down the stairs from the 4th floor. The stairs were quite dark and winding. Than had to hold on to the wall, walking carefully step by step. With each step he took, he heard someone's footsteps right behind him. He walked slowly so the footsteps slowed down. He walked quickly so the footsteps quickened. At this moment, Than's whole body got goosebumps. He had a feeling that something was wrong was following him. Without much time to think, Than hurriedly ran down to the lower floors, almost tripping. The footsteps behind him also followed, making him extremely panicked. Finally, he reached the first floor. Just as he was gasping for breath, a hand hit him hard on the back. Than was startled and screamed. It turned out to be the company's security guard. He quickly asked, "Hey, what are you doing yelling so loudly? Are you working overtime and coming home late?" Thane was still panting. After regaining his composure, he replied, "Yes, I'll stay and finish the work, Uncle. I'm so tired." The security guard continued, "It's raining and windy like this. Let's go home and rest. Don't work too late. By the way, who were you talking to?" Thang didn't pay attention to the last question. He quickly walked down to the garage and left the company, leaving behind an unanswered question. It was raining. Than put the key in the ignition, turned on the headlights, and drove home quickly. The deserted road made him feel like someone was following him. In particular, he clearly felt something very heavy behind the saddle. His back was cold, as if it was carrying a block of ice. When the bike reached the riverbank, where he had thrown the ring a few days ago, the engine suddenly died. He tried to restart it many times but failed, so he had to get off the bike and push it. Strangely, the bike was much heavier than usual today, forcing him to use all his strength to push it. When he got out of the riverbank area, the bike suddenly started again, as if nothing had happened. Than immediately drove straight home. When he got there, he sat down to rest for a while, and then decided to take a shower. Just then, the doorbell rang. Just a short ring. He went out to see, but saw no one, thinking he had misheard, so he went back to the bathroom. But then the bell rang again. At first a few times, then incessantly. Than was annoyed and ran out, calling out, "Who is it? Slow down, I'll be right out." However, when he opened the door, there was absolutely no one there. A strong fishy smell suddenly hit him, making him frown. He stepped out to check and suddenly felt slippery under his feet. Bending down, Than discovered that he had stepped into a large puddle of mud, surrounded by countless human footprints. Although it was drizzling lightly, there was no one out there, yet the footprints continued to appear on the ground. A creepy feeling invaded Than's entire body. He quickly locked the door, ran upstairs, and covered himself tightly under the blanket. His body was burning hot as if he had a fever, and he fell asleep without realizing it. In his sleep, Than heard sobbing, very soft at first, then gradually becoming clearer and more sorrowful. He opened his eyes with a start and lay still listening. The sound of crying still echoed, sometimes far, sometimes near. He decided to get out of bed and looked towards the window. Thane was startled when he saw a girl with long hair falling to her shoulders, wearing white clothes, standing in front of the door, covering her face and sobbing. He panicked and ran out to see, then fell backwards. In front of him was a skinny girl, her whole body soaked, water dripping onto the floor. Her face was pale, her eye sockets were deep, her gaze was haunting. She just stood there looking at him for a long time, then spoke, her voice echoing from a faraway place. "Save me, I'm dying. It hurts so much." Then jumped when the alarm clock rang. He jumped up, gasping for breath, realizing it was just a dream. However, the feeling was so real that he couldn't breathe. Than ran to the gate and was shocked when he saw the ground in front of the yard still covered with muddy footprints. That whole day, Than couldn't concentrate on his work. The image of the girl from last night haunted him endlessly. Tonight, he didn't dare to work overtime anymore. When he got to the first floor, the security guard stopped him and asked, "Hey, where's the girl from yesterday? Didn't she come back with you?" Thane was stunned, not understanding who he was talking about. The security guard explained, "Last night I saw you leaving the company with the girl. She looked very pretty, but her face was pale and her eyes were sad." Thane felt cold all over when he heard that. Who was the girl with him last night? Why did only the security guard see it? On the way back, when he had just reached the riverbank where he had thrown the ring, the car died again. Suddenly, a familiar cry rang out in his ears. Than panicked, looked around, and saw a white figure floating on the water. He fell backwards on the ground, then tried to get up, pushed the car, and ran as fast as he could back home. When he got home, Than rushed into the bathroom, turned on the water, and poured it over his head to wake up. But suddenly, the water turned from cold to hot. He quickly turned off the water and saw the mirror in front of him covered in mist with a scribbled line, "Help me." Thane was scared and put on his clothes and ran outside. His mother heard the noise and ran over. He told her the whole story. His mother believed in spirituality, and after hearing it, she was extremely worried. The next morning, his mother took Than to see a famous teacher that her friends knew. As soon as she saw Tan's expression, the teacher shook his head and said, "You are possessed by a female spirit." But this female ghost had a grievance, so she followed Than. At this time, the mother and son looked at each other in confusion, not knowing why the female ghost followed him and since when. While both were still worried, Than's mother thought that perhaps because he often went out early and came home late, the ghost from the street followed him home to harass him. The shaman just shook his head and said in a low voice, making Than and his mother even more afraid, "This female ghost is still very young." This friend, pointing to Than, "I saw the ghost following closely beside her, but she couldn't enter the house. Right now, she's still standing outside the gate. It seems that she died unjustly. Her body hasn't been found yet." Hearing that, Than and his mother turned to look towards the shaman's gate, but saw nothing. The shaman slowly walked out of the gate, mumbling something as if he was talking to the ghost. A moment later, he turned back, looked at Than, and continued to ask, "You had a kidney transplant before, right? So do you know who that kidney belongs to?" Hearing this, Than was stunned. He did not expect the teacher to know about this, but why did he ask about that? What does it have to do with that deceased woman? While Than was about to answer, his mother gently pulled his shirt, signaling him not to say anything. She spoke up. "Sir, that kidney belonged to a girl who donated her organs. As for who she was, the hospital did not disclose it to my family." The teacher just shook his head and said sternly, "If you want me to help, you have to tell the truth. That kidney was not donated but bought, right?" Hearing this, Than looked at his mother with wide eyes in surprise. He himself did not know about that. Than's mother silently bowed her head, tacitly admitting. The teacher continued, "That girl's family is poor, but she has a good heart. She donated her organs to save people, but why did that kidney end up in your hands?" "I don't know. I only know that, even though she is a spirit, she still has no intention of harming you. She doesn't blame you. On the contrary, she wants to meet you to talk. Now I will perform a ceremony, inviting the spirit to enter my body for a moment. Only when she knows the root of the matter can she let go." Than's mother spoke up. "I rely on you for everything. I hope you can help me." The teacher nodded without saying anything, took out a ritual drawing, lit 3 incense sticks, and drew 3 circles on top of Than's head, 3 circles under his left heel. Then he placed the 3 incense sticks on the altar, sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and chanted a mantra. A moment later, the teacher's body began to shake slightly. His head shook back and forth. His face suddenly became emotionless, his eyes lifeless. Then began to feel his hair stand on end. Then a voice rang out, but it was no longer the teacher's voice. It was a female voice, whispering, choking. "Save me! Save me! I died unjustly. It's so cold. The bottom of the river is so cold." The voice was full of sorrow, making Than and his mother extremely scared. But that voice continued to speak more gently. "Don't be afraid. I won't harm you two. I just want to be helped." I'm lying at the bottom of the cold river. No one knows. No one is looking for me." Having said that, the teacher's body trembled. Tears flowed from his eyes as if the dead woman was sobbing. Than's mother trembled as she approached, patted the ghost girl's shoulder, and asked softly, "You, please calm down. If anything happens, just tell us. We will find a way to help you." The ghost girl, that girl, slowly told the story of her tragic life. Gradually, everything began to become clear. Her name is Huang Ti Li, 24 years old, living in a poor rural area of Guangninh province. Her father died early. She lives with her old mother, who is now over 60 years old. After her father passed away, the family's situation became increasingly difficult. Lai had to drop out of school in grade 9 to work as a farmer to help her mother. In recent years, Lai's mother has been sick often. Her health is poor, so she has become the main breadwinner in the family. Despite trying to work hard all year round, life still does not improve. One day, through an acquaintance's introduction, Lai was invited to Mongkai Border Gate to work as an employee at a coffee shop. They promised to pay her a very high salary, even giving her a year's salary in advance to send back home to repair the house and treat her mother's illness. Hearing the news, her mother was very happy, thinking that her daughter had finally met a good person to help her. The life of the mother and daughter would probably be less difficult from now on. But it was just a trap. After signing the papers and receiving the money, Lai sent most of it back home, keeping only a small amount for personal expenses. Soon after, she was taken to a house near the border. There were many other young girls who had been tricked like her. They forced Lai to work as a waitress in a karaoke bar, not a coffee shop as promised. Lai was extremely shocked and resisted fiercely, but was locked in a closed room and brutally beaten by them. The original contract paper was actually a loan with extremely high interest rates. They threatened that if she did not work to pay off the debt, they would harm her mother. Li was in pain, humiliated, and blamed herself for being too naive and trusting. With no other choice, she had to accept selling her body to pay off that cruel debt. Every time she finished serving, she felt disgusted with herself. The perverted, sick sexual acts of the customers haunted her to the core. Day by day, she lived in resentment and despair. On the outside, she tried to fake a smile to please the customers, but deep down, she only wished to escape that hell on earth, even if only for a moment. Her youth was buried in humiliation. She no longer believed in anything good. Lai tried to escape many times, but was caught every time. Each time, she was beaten to the point of being unable to walk. She lived like a shadow, trying to endure every day. After a period of serving customers continuously, her body became increasingly weak. Her face was pale, gaunt, her skin darkened by lack of sleep, lack of food, and beatings. She used to be the girl most chosen by customers, but now, no one paid any attention. They saw that she was no longer of any use, so they immediately devised a more cruel plan. They tied her hands and feet, gagged her, and sold her to an organ trafficking ring. Before losing consciousness, Lai could still clearly feel the cold knife slashing deep into her body. Every time the knife cut into her flesh, she screamed in despair. But no one listened. No one saved her. And then, nothing was left. After that, her organs were divided into small pieces and sold everywhere like goods on the black market. Each part was priced, traded coldly. Only her kidney, the last remaining gift from a lost body, was sold to Than's family to transplant into their son. Than himself was completely unaware of what was behind that organ donation. Than's health condition then became very bad. No one was sure whether he could wait until there was an organ donor. Organ traffickers were always on standby in major hospitals, especially in the critical care areas, just waiting for the opportunity to hunt for a suitable prey. Thane was the only child in the family. In desperation, his parents took a risk and turned to the black market to save their son. after a successful kidney transplant and gradual recovery. Than heard the doctor say that the kidney transplanted to him was from an unfortunate young girl who had died. He wanted to meet the girl's family to thank them, but according to information confidentiality regulations, the hospital could not reveal it, and he did not even know her name. As for Lai's body, after all her organs were removed, to avoid detection, the traffickers dismembered her body, put it in sacks, and threw it into the river. Because her lungs had also been removed, it was difficult for her body to float to the surface. To be sure, they stuffed many large rocks into the sack, ensuring that the body could not rise. Lai's soul wandered at the bottom of the river, suffering from hunger and cold without anyone knowing. After a while, the water current pushed the sack to drift to the exact area where Than had thrown the commemorative ring into the river. Than, carrying Lai's kidney, made her immediately realize that he was the one carrying a part of her body. From then on, Than was like her last lifeline of hope. She followed him, trying to find a way to communicate with him, to ask him to help find her body, bring it back for burial so that her soul could be freed, not having to endure the eternal torment of the cold river. At that time, her mother still did not know that her daughter had been killed, dismembered, and thrown into the river. That pain is still waiting to be revealed. After hearing the whole story told by Lai's spirit, the shaman also turned pale, his body covered in cold sweat. His body staggered, falling backwards. Than and his mother quickly helped him up. After a while, he calmed down and said, "Even though she is a water spirit, I still heard everything she said clearly. She is a victim of an organ trafficking ring. The immediate thing to do is to find her body and bring it back to her hometown for a proper burial." He asked Than about the location of the river where he threw the ring. After listening carefully, the shaman instructed, "In 2 days at noon, we will go there to perform the ceremony." On the appointed day, the shaman led a few disciples, carrying all the offerings, to the riverbank. At exactly 12 noon, he began the ceremony. The master lit a large bundle of incense, dividing it into 3 parts. 1 stick was stuck in the ground in the direction Than threw the ring. The other 2 sticks were stuck on either side, about 3 to 4 steps away. Then he drew a yin-yang circle on the ground, used the incense stick to draw a talisman inside, and stuck the incense stick straight into the center of the circle. The sky was calm when the river suddenly became rough, even though there was no wind. At this time, the master took out a yellow flag from his back, waved it to the left, and chanted a spell. Immediately, a young disciple jumped into the river, swimming in the direction the master pointed. After swimming a short distance, he turned back to look at the master as if waiting for orders. After looking back 3 times, on the 4th time, the master nodded decisively. The disciple dove deep into the riverbed and after a while struggled to pull up a large sack. The sack was heavy and was slowly pulled to the shore. The air became cold and heavy, suffocating. When the sack was opened, the first thing everyone saw was a long, tangled mass of hair. The master's disciple used a knife to carefully cut open the sack, the stench rising up, making everyone's faces pale. Thun's mother was shocked, clutching her son's hand tightly. Inside was indeed the body of a girl in the process of severe decomposition. Some parts had rotted to the point that even the white bones were exposed. The body parts had been cut off, temporarily stuffed in the sack. Thun stood still. He saw very clearly that the abdomen of the body had been cut open, empty. No internal organs were left inside. Even the 2 eye sockets were deeply gouged out, leaving only a terrifying black hole. Everything that Lai's soul told, up to this moment, had been confirmed to be true. That girl had been killed too cruelly. Her body was not intact, and she had to endure unimaginable pain before passing away. Lai's body was handed over to the police for investigation. From that clue, the police broke up a transnational prostitution and organ trafficking ring. This was a large-scale ring, operating sophisticatedly and for many years. Many people were victims to the point that it was difficult to count the exact number. Among them, many people lost their lives. Lai was just one of them. As for Lai's mother, she still did not know that her daughter had been in trouble. After a long time without seeing Lai return, she began to worry, asking everywhere, but all was lost. To ease her longing, she often burned incense and prayed, hoping that one day her daughter would return. When news came, it was bad news. Lai was her only support. Losing her daughter, her life seemed to have completely collapsed. There was no meaning to continue living. Feeling sorry for the old mother who lost her child, Than, who carried Lai's kidney and was also a survivor thanks to that silent sacrifice, decided to adopt her as his adoptive mother and take care of her for the rest of his life as a way to repay her kindness. After taking care of her funeral with Lai's mother, Than set up a separate altar and considered Lai as his own sister. He often burned incense and prayed as a way to express his gratitude to the person who saved his life. A few months later, while sleeping one night, Than suddenly met Lai in his dream. At that time, she no longer had the cold and painful appearance as before, but looked exactly like a normal person. Although he knew in his heart that Lai had died, and that was just her spirit, Than still clearly felt her presence. Lai stood a distance away from him, said nothing, just silently looked at him for a long time. Then she slowly knelt down and knocked her head 3 times as a way to express her gratitude. Then she approached, gently took Than's hand, placed a coin in his palm, then turned and walked away. Than stood still and watched, Lai's back gradually fading into nothingness. He woke up, his hand still clenched, and strangely enough, the coin was still in his hand, shining brightly in the dim light of the early morning. He didn't understand the true meaning of that coin, but from that day on, his life and work changed in an unexpectedly good direction. Than opened his own company. His business developed rapidly and his income was stable. Not only that, he also established a support fund for poor patients with serious illnesses, especially those waiting for organ transplants. Through his work, he connected the community, creating a network of help between organ donors and recipients, bringing hope to thousands of others. Then always thought up in the sky, perhaps Lee was also smiling peacefully, because her kidney did not fall into the hands of a bad person, but saved a good person. A person who cherished life and gave it away again. Her death was tragic, but the life she left behind was extremely noble. Ladies and gentlemen, our story ends here. This may not be a beautiful ending in the usual sense, because the dead cannot be revived and the pain that has occurred cannot be changed. But if you think carefully, this is still a meaningful ending. Because life is not just about the existence of the body, but also about what we leave behind. Through this story, I want to strongly condemn organ trafficking, prostitution, and inhumane crimes that still exist in the darkness of today's society. Those who disregard everything for money, consider human life as a commodity, are truly heartless. They take advantage of the poor and ignorant, leading them into deadly traps, making them like moths caught in a spider's web, unable to escape, only waiting to die in vain. The dream of changing one's life, escaping poverty, is sometimes the grave that buries hope. Hopefully, through this story, each of us will be more alert, more vigilant, not letting ourselves or our loved ones fall into wrong decisions, so that even if we regret it, there will be no chance to do it again. Wishing all listeners a peaceful and good night's sleep. Goodbye, and see you again in the next story.